Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing May by the band Echolyn.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So this is what's gonna happen. You see, May is a 50-minute long album with only one song. And when I thought of making this video, I really wanted to try and capture the essence of what this song actually sounds like, and I was very much afraid that I wouldn't be able to pick up that many favorite bits in order to give the impression off. But rest assured, I have so many favorite bits from this one, like so many that it's even untypical for a regular album in the same length. And specifically, there are 16 favorite bits, so enjoy this condensed version of this entire album as I'll meet you all in like 2 minutes or maybe even more.
Sun breathes against the window, but its warmth just fades away. The humming road whispers loud. The taste of violence, the same silence. The skies won't perform here
So 5 days ago, I was introduced for the first time to a band called Echolyn. And well, I reviewed them back then and I enjoyed their music very much, and today we are reviewing their album May, which is literally a beast of an album. And because I have so much to say about this one, I honestly don't have the time to elaborate more on their backstory and history, and luckily I already did so in the previous episode about them, which is only 5 days back. So if you're interested to know more about this band and how they came to form and what of their existence, you can just go back and watch the video about I Heard You Listening. It has all that you need to know. But today's album that we're reviewing is of course called May without a capital M. And I got a quick brief of this one when I read a comment when researching I Heard You Listening, and I saw someone stating that yeah, the band did in the past an album called May and it's like one song of 50 minutes. 50 minutes. I was amazed by this. I didn't know what to think of this. I was like, oh my god, I want to listen to this so much. And Back then, I didn't even realize that I had it on the list, and moreover than that it was coming and fast approaching in only 5 days. Now, I honestly didn't really know what to expect with this one, because after listening to Echolyn with their latest album, I kinda just had a lot of fun with it, but I really didn't think that these guys were in the right mindset to actually create such a long and very much ambitious album. But who knew, maybe these guys would pull it off, and maybe we'd finally get to see some of these gentle giant influences that everybody keeps talking about in relation to these guys. But I didn't know, so of course I did the right thing and I started listening to it. So much like I did with Light of Day and Day of Darkness by Green Carnation, which is also an hour-long track of an album, I found the right time for it. I made sure that the time was free so I wouldn't have any interruptions. I put my phone on mute, I put in my headphones, clicked this one and started playing it and got into the journey that it presented. So much like any good epic which is long in length, this one is of course also divided into subsections, and specifically into 14 separate subsections, with the shorter one being around 2 minutes long and the longer ones being around 6, with the exception of one very short one being only 21 seconds, but it's actually understandable because that one's an interlude. But despite it being separated into so many subsections, there is a good reason why this one is considered to be one song, because it is surprisingly cohesive as a singular unit. And the lineup of the band on here features the 4 main members, of course without Tom Hyatt, which I talked about in the previous video, just go ahead, watch that one. But we have the 4 members basically taking the usual rock responsibilities, being the drums, the keyboards, guitars, and a bass. Almost everyone except for the drums are also on vocals, which is also a good thing because it allows for some really interesting harmonies. And as well as the core of the band, we also have several other members, specifically 2 violinists, 1 celloist, 1 flautist, 1 clarinetist, I don't even know if I'm saying this wrong, and basically 2 other percussionists. And together they set out to create an album like no other, a grand epic of such a big magnitude. And well, just notice the fact that this album came out in 2002. This isn't the year of Prog. Prog was stagnant as ever on here, and if these guys didn't manage this one to actually succeed, well, it would flop worse than the last season of Game of Thrones. But basically, surprisingly, these guys excelled and passed this test with flying colors. Now, I will not detail this entire track and actually, divide it to its subsections and try and digest everything and tell you all what happens at each and every single moment on here, because that's honestly very much not real to do. So if you like the favorite bits and you want to get to know this song, the best thing you can do is free up some time and go ahead and give it a listen, because I honestly think that you wouldn't regret it. But I think that the most important thing that we can do in reviewing this song is talking about why it works and why I love this one so damn much. So firstly, I'll state the obvious. I have a soft spot for long epics and suites. I love them so much. Everything from Atom Heart Mother to Supper's Ready to Zarathustra, you name it, I love it. And while I am well aware that I am quite unbiased when it comes to these longer songs, I am also aware of the fact that no, not everyone can compose this type of song, and if you fail doing this, you fail it quite royally. And this is probably the most powerful and interesting thing that Echolyn were able to do with this one. One, they managed to make each and every subsection of this one be entirely distinguishable and distinct from one another, yet at the same time, and that's 2, being able to also have each subsection hearken to the ones that came before it and do the same for the ones that come after it. And this ability to make all the subsections on here feel quite related to one another and as natural continuations of one another makes this entire song called May one singular piece that is easy to digest, as well as just being so good despite being 50 minutes long. And come to think of it, this actually makes sense that I like this one so much, because it has a lot of similarities to the Sleeping in Traffic suite from the Sleeping in Traffic Part 2 album by Beardfish. And speaking of the beloved fish of beardedness, I just think that there's a lot of similarities to be found with these 2 bands. And honestly, I wasn't expecting it, because listening to 2015's I Heard You Listening didn't really give me the vibe vibe of Beardfish, yet this one has everything that has to do with the lovely Swedish band. Now, of course, when I got into this list and I finally found out about Sleeping in Traffic Part 2, I was amazed by it. It's my favorite album from the list so far, and for a good reason. And well, I was expecting to find a similar Beardfish sound with their second popular album being +4626 Comfort Zone, but when I reviewed that album I found out that they've morphed their sound into something that I liked less. But if there is one thing that I didn't expect on finding, is the same so much lovable sound like Beardfish's in this album today. And you know, this is the point where I try to think to myself what this sound actually is. What is the unique sound of Beardfish? What is the unique sound of Echolyn? How do I describe it? Well, I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant over here, but I think that it has something to do with learning from the past and being very ingenuitive with the way that you create music nowadays, and of course overall being progressive. You see, my claim back in episode 75 when I reviewed Beardfish's album was that it felt like these guys have heard everything that came in the past, they've learned from the successes and failures both ways, and they created something which is just bigger than life and uses all the tools available, especially in the modern age. And it seems like Echolyn are doing the same thing. You might want to call this retro prog, but I honestly don't like this definition because it says that this is basically supposed to sound like something that came out in the 70s, when in actuality it makes a lot of use of a lot of advances that weren't able back then. And you know, this type of music, I have no idea how to call it. There could be so many names, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. And if you don't, well, you gotta listen to these albums and get what I'm saying. But did I expect to discover such a wonderful album today? No, I didn't. I really didn't expect to discover this one today, and honestly, I'm quite shook by it. I've been replaying this one all day long, despite it being 15 minutes. Every single time that the last note hits, I would click the play button yet again and go for another round, enjoying it more and more each and every time. And while yes, at this moment I kinda haven't delved into the lyrics of this one, I still do think that there's a lot to explore before actually going ahead and sitting down with the lyrics and getting to know this album even better. And you know, this is why I'm happy I'm doing this series, because honestly, now that I know an album like this, I can't believe that this would have not have happened if I didn't go on this journey. The fact is, there will always be great music and there will always be perfect albums waiting for you just around the corner, and you'll never know that they're there if you don't try. And that's why I highly encourage anyone that is following this series or just wants to get to know more music, go ahead, explore, invite new sounds into your mind, because who knows, maybe you'll find the thing that is gonna stick with you for the rest of your life. And when it comes to May by Echolyn, I do really think that this is one of those albums which I'll never forget. So yeah, for anyone watching this video, if it wasn't even clear already, go ahead, listen to May by Echolyn. You might not like it as much as I did, but you're definitely not gonna like it more than I did. And yeah, and just to make things clear, I've added all of Echolyn's discography to the reserve list, so every other band, up yours. So as I said, despite listening to this album all day long, I still haven't gotten to actually read the lyrics for it and at least know its full capacity, so I couldn't say if the lyrics have anything to do with the cover to be found on this album, but honestly, I'm kinda doubtful that they do. This is not a bad cover per se, I just think it's a pretty simple cover for a very not simple album by any stretch of the imagination. There's so much to be found on this album, yet there's so little to be found on this cover. It looks good, it's interesting, it doesn't really grant much more than a few seconds of looking time before I move on to doing something else, but now that I know what music it aims to represent, I can't help but separate the cover art from the art that is the music of this album, so I guess it will just go with it for the rest of forever. Yes, I guess that at some point I'll just have to come to the realization that I don't have enough of like 50-minute free blocks on each day to actually replay this album over and over and over. But you know what, I've done this mistake with past favorites of mine like Sleeping in Traffic or Siona Vaidbuswandu Saikiem Sai Zone. So I'll make this mistake again before I'll stop listening to this one on constant repeat. And if it wasn't obvious quite yet, this is a perfect album, no doubts about it. It's a perfect 10 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video because I definitely enjoyed making it and I enjoy this album so much. And yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow when we review the album Matching Mole by Matching Mole. It's one of the albums that you guys voted on to be added on the list. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay One, Mist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are just the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.